I'm Geraint Davies MP for Swansea West. Thank you very much for coming here to the Thatcher room. As you can see, Mrs T is on the wall there, and she could have been the mother of TTIP, in fact. In fact, on the monitor earlier, I should apologise, when it said TTIP at 6:15, it was spelled T-E-A, TIP. But I'm not here to give you advice on warming kettles or anything like that. The TTIP itself, the Transatlantic Trade Agreement, European Partnership, is basically an EU-US free trade deal. It's not about climate change, it's not about fairness, it's not about public services. It's about stripping away the influence of democracy so that free trade can agree and profit can be championed. And so therefore it is a very dangerous thing we're confronting here. And as Sam has already alluded to, the major problem of TTIP is there's something called ISDS, the Investor State Dispute Settlement, which is basically a system of law that is outside public law. That's basically arbitration panels meeting in secret with corporations suing democratically elected governments for, as he mentioned, undisclosed amounts for lost future profit in result for Democrats passing the laws to protect citizens. So by way of example, in the case of Philip Morris versus Australia and Uruguay, obviously the government is saying we should have marked packaging to warn people of the dangers. Philip Morris is saying that will constrain our future profit, so we're going to sue you. Of course, if they win this, the impact on trading cigarettes in the developing world will be enormous in terms of killing people even more prematurely than they are at the moment. There's been cases in Slovakia, for example, of a big insurance company suing the Slovakian government for reversing privatisation of some of their healthcare. There's been cases of Lone Pine, which is a big fracking company in America, suing Canada for $250 million because Quebec put a moratorium on fracking because the impacts on health and our environment. And so the list goes on. And indeed, given that the focus is on maximising profits, you can imagine the architects of TTIP aren't very interested in publicly provided services. So privatisation is a one-way street. Hence the example, as I say, of Slovakia. So there's enormous problems. And what's happened is there is an emerging awareness of this, but because of the complexity of it, it is quite difficult to get these messages across. That being said, people will know there's 1 million people that signed a petition against TTIP, as it were, across Europe. In the UK, 500,000 people have signed up, and so it goes on. I'm clear about this, I'm not against the EU, I'm pro-EU, and I'm not against trade, I'm for trade. And I do, in fact, see this process as an opportunity to actually create a blueprint for the future, because after all, the big economic blocks are the EU and the US, and the big challenge is how do we incorporate the challenges of, for instance, climate change, fair trade, human rights, etc., in our trading agreement. Because at the moment, we're just running away, burning up our resources, exploiting the weakest, and big multinational companies are crushing people, including democracy itself. Because in the small print of TTIP, and many ministers who were supposedly involved in negotiating this, I said to Livingston, Lord Livingston is supposed to be involved in these engagements, that do you know how long this agreement binds us for? And he said, oh, well, it hasn't been decided. Well, it is 20 years. And so if you have a big argument about should we leave the EU or whatever, we could tie ourselves into this, then leave the EU, not that I'd want to, and we'll still be tied into this. We can't extract ourselves. And in terms of the hierarchy of law, from sort of local government law to say regional governments and UK government, then we've got Europe, this actually trumps them all. So TTIP, which is meeting in private, doing these arbitration panels, can actually, there's a case in Sri Lanka where they trump that law. So what I'm saying, I guess, is that these issues about democracy, about human rights, about public finances and about public services are key issues for all of us in this room and beyond. And it's very important to get that message out. Now, I've tried, as all of us have, to get it out, and it is quite difficult when I have to think of strategies of getting this across. And I managed to get a half page in The Sun, which was entitled "Pasties to Get a Pasting. Our British Nosh is at risk." And what I did was I re-spun the story to point out that in Europe, there's protection for certain products like champagne or indeed Cornish pasties or Cumberland sausages, according to where they come from. Now the Americans don't like this because they believe the world consists of global brands, not locally produced products. And the French and the Italians have actually protected their names, and Britain hasn't bothered. And so, of course, that's why this thing came out in the Mirror saying, Cumberland sausage in danger of being produced in Canada. Oh no! But I mean, if that's what it takes to get people interested in what is, could be a step change in our democratic future, so be it. I put down a bill which is called the International Trade Agreement Scrutiny Bill that simply asks for scrutiny amendment of all trade agreements, both TTIP and the Canadian one, CETA and others, in Parliament and, of course, in the EU Parliament, and there's support for that. But the big problem people don't know about when they're talking about TTIP, they're all beginning to barricade the door against TTIP, is that the back door is open. And through that back door is coming CETA. Now, CETA is the Canadian EU free trade agreement. And in that agreement, which has already been agreed and is due to be ratified in the spring, are all these sharp teeth, namely the ISDS. So in other words, if you, I'm not sure you aren't, but if, well, there may be some multinational representatives in here, but I don't know. But anyway, if you were a US conglomerate, you will be able to export through a Canadian subsidiary into the EU and then use the mechanisms of that, the ISDS, to sue democratically elected governments for example, I don't know, nationalising the railways, or in the case of Argentina, they put freezes, and remember the Labour Party suggested freezes on energy prices. They got fined $1 billion for that by energy giants and the like. So, in other words, in conclusion then, I'm really pleased you're all here. I hope you will do your tweeting. We need to stand firm and say this isn't the right deal. I don't think trade is bad itself. I do think there's an opportunity to actually change the rules and talk about climate change, etc. There is a corporate wolf lurking at the back door, about to sink their teeth into our democracy and public finances. And our human rights, and we need to work together to say no to the current state affairs in TTIP. The European Union has, in fact, taken out ISDS out of the negotiations, and it's moving ahead. But we need to change it, take a lot out, and put a lot back in to create a better world for ourselves and all our children.